to join us will be able to refer to the recorded webinar. Everyone is muted except for the speakers. Audio will be played through the webinar portal and or the dial-in number for the webinar. Please enter any questions you may have in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the webinar, we will attempt to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can. So again, today we have Tom Bolanos and Madeline Loria joining us with NetApp Retail, and I will turn it over to Tom to take away with our webinar on RFID technology.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Well, thanks everyone for joining the call. As Matt said, my name is Tom Bolanos. Matt, you can go to the next slide here. I'm Tom Bolanos, as I just said. I'm the account executive, or one of the account executives here at NetApp Retail. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, but our US headquarters is in Boston. So that's where we do all of our main headquarter stuff, but I'm kind of all over the US, and I do sales in both account management as well. I will introduce Madeline Loria as well. Turn over, Matt.
Hey everyone, so this is Madeline. I am part of the business development team in the US as well. I work on the software side for our product ID Cloud. So we're really focusing on inventory management, enabling omni-channel. So happy to be here and happy to add some insights. If you guys have any questions in regards to some of the information we present, please feel free to ask.
Yep, and I should also say, while Madeline does on the inventory management side, I work more on the loss prevention side and represent our iSense line, which is our loss prevention technology. All right, I know Matt kind of went over this already, but just to reiterate some of the house rules. So the webinar itself should last around 30 to 40 minutes, somewhere in there. As Matt said, there will be a question and answer time. So please hold all your questions for that, and we'll answer those to the best of our ability. The webinar is recorded, so after the webinar, if you guys want to share it with any colleagues that may find it interesting, we'd appreciate that. And then also, if you see it on social media, you can like and share to kind of stretch the broadcast out as far as we can get it. So those are kind of the house rules, and I appreciate all that. So as far as the agenda of the webinar, what we're going to be talking about, I'm just going to kind of lay the table here. First, we're going to talk about NetApp's vision of what retail is going to be here in the future, what it is now, where we see it going. Then we'll talk about the current status of RFID in retail, where it's at, where it's being used, and kind of the challenges going forward. We're going to specifically dive into the tagging challenges of RFID adoption and why that has been a challenge for retailers. We're going to talk about RFID source tagging, obviously, and then how it benefits loss prevention as well as the inventory management side. We'll kind of dive into that, and then we'll close up, and then we'll have time for questions. So as far as NetApp's vision on retail, as we see it, obviously the world is changing. Retail has been influenced by a number of different technologies. A lot of tech companies like Uber, Airbnb, Amazon have really changed the way that we go about retail and really what we expect. What we expect from service, availability, and simplicity is much different than it used to be. It used to be very common to go into a store, wait in long lines. If they don't have your size, you'd order, it could take a couple weeks. That no longer is common in retail, and it's starting to go away. And retailers are starting to use technologies in order to change that. You can go to the next slide, Matt. So as we see these customer behaviors changing, we see new technologies having to be introduced to retailers in order to help adopt these changes. Obviously, omni-channel is a big topic that we all know about in retail right now. We're seeing how these new technologies can help this new process be faster and more efficient, and really provide the customer experience that customers are now not only expecting but demanding at the same time. And one of the main technologies we see that's actually going to be changing the retail landscape is the technology of RFID. You know, we've heard about RFID for a long time. It's going to be in retail. I mean, that's the big running joke we hear at all the trade shows, that RFID is going to be in retail in the next 5 years, and we've heard that for the last 20 years. But we are starting to see it make a big impact in retail in a variety of different ways. Well, one of those being in the manufacturing space, retailers are starting to use RFID in their manufacturing to be able to watch a product go from the very beginning all the way throughout the manufacturing process. It helps retailers be able to control the quality of the product. And then if there is any defects, they can actually narrow it down to where that happened in the manufacturing process, so they can get better, and they can also pull those products off the market as well. Then we see it in distribution. Once the product actually leaves the manufacturing, it'll go to a distribution center. Retailers really want to be able to see where these products are going. We're starting to see RFID tunnels right there in the distribution center. So when you put a bunch of products on a pallet, they get into a truck, they go through the RFID tunnel, and you can see exactly what's leaving the distribution center, what stores they're going to, and really have a lot of visibility into that. And then obviously we're starting to see it move into the actual stores itself, the store inventory, and then loss prevention and security. And that's really what we're going to dive into in this webinar, is where we're seeing RFID actually in the store, and how the source tagging could possibly help all the barriers of getting RFID the most efficient in these stores. Before we jump into that though, I just wanted to kind of lay the table of why retailers are actually switching to RFID or wanting RFID within their store. And one of the big reasons is, like I was saying earlier, our customers are online more and more and more, and they're starting to expect the same type of online experience at the store as they have on their mobile phone. So like I was saying, customers expect fast and simple checkouts now. Long lines, cumbersome hard tags, the whole store of the past is starting to be phased out, and really it kind of can leave a bad mouth in the taste of the customers as they're going through, especially if you have to sit and wait through a long line, to buy a pair of socks or something like that. So RFID can help speed up a lot of processes within the store. POS flexibility. There's no need now to actually have a fixed POS station, in order to control not only the checkout process, but in removing hard tags and whatnot. You can actually do POS stations throughout the store. Like I'm sure most of us have been to Apple stores, and you walk in and there's not a place you go to actually pay. You talk to a customer, or you talk to one of the associates. They have a mobile payment station. They can scan the product. You can pay for it, and just walk out the door. So RFID is really helping that ability change the store environment. And then on the inventory management side, you're starting to see it much more efficient and much faster process using RFID than having to do it using the old barcode scanners. Retailers for a while were doing it every 6 months to a year in the old ways, and it's really hard to have accurate inventory if you're doing it in that time space. So it's really nice with RFID to be able to walk into a store, have a handheld, and wand an entire store, within an hour or so. So RFID's really helped in the inventory levels as well. And then overall, just a cleaner customer store experience. If you use RFID for loss prevention, you don't have to have hard tags anymore. You don't have to have the pedestals at the front of the store that kind of bottleneck the front. You can use overhead readers. You can use soft labels like we're going to talk about today to really open up that front entrance of the store, and give your customers an inviting experience as they walk into your store, and no longer feel like they're going through a metal detector or an airport security system. So. But as we know, moving to RFID has big challenges associated with that. And one of the biggest challenges I've seen is just the tagging aspect of it. If we get products and they're not tagged with RFID, it makes it very challenging. Who's going to do this tagging? Are we going to do it at the DC? Are we going to do it at the store? Do we want part-time workers adding RFID tags, or seasonal workers putting RFID tags on products? It's not as easy as just slapping a label on a product. We all know with RFID, liquid and metals have a factor in their performance. So it's very important to not only have an RFID tag on the product, but also have that RFID tag in the right spot. So when we're tagging products, it's very important that the person that's actually tagging understands that. So that's obviously a challenge. And then the labor associated cost with that as well. If you're having to pay people to sit and tag products, that obviously is an influence as well. label costs themselves, although RFID labels are going down in cost, still the additional cost of having to add this label in the store is up there. It's just one of the things that retailers have to consider, and all the ROI is probably there. It's still a cost that is a factor in the decision. And then, do you need multiple types of labels? Like I said, some products are going to work better than others with RFID labels, so you have to have specific types of labels. And that's one of the things that retailers are going to have to navigate through if they're going to be labeling things themselves. And then overall, like tag pollution. So if you're a retailer that's used an AM EAS system throughout your existence, and now you're switching to RFID in some stores and whatnot, is tag pollution gonna cause problems within the store? Is the RFID tag close to the AM tag gonna cause problems with the system? These are all decisions and factors that we have to take into account when we're looking at actually hand applying RFID labels. So those are the big challenges. We can see getting to RFID in retail, it feels like we have to jump over this chasm. We have the old technology, and then we want to go to RFID, and how do we get there? And I really see the way that happens is RFID source tagging. When you have products coming to your store that have RFID tags already on them, it eliminates so much of the tagging challenges. As you know, obviously the cost, these are showing up at your store. You don't have to pay for the RFID tags. You don't have to pay someone to apply them. You don't have to worry that RFID tag may not be suitable for that product, because if they're already tagging at the source, then they know that RFID tag is paired with that product. So RFID source tagging just really makes it much simpler for retailers to be able to jump into that. Here, I just wanted to highlight a few major brands, and there's plenty of other brands that are out there that are doing this as well. But these are the big ones that I've seen that catch my eye, that are already doing source tagging or moving into source tagging in the future. Nike, Ralph Lauren, Levi's, Uniqlo, Under Armour, Adidas, or Adidas, the way the Americans say it. But one other thing I wanted to mention, I just read an article about Ralph Lauren and how they're using RFID source tagging, and then they're pairing that with the QR code on the actual sewn-in label of the product. That way the customer can actually scan the product with their phone and make sure the product's not a knockoff, and make sure it's an authentic product. So we're seeing RFID source tagging even being used to authenticate the products and cut down on counterfeits. So it's very, very cool how all these different retailers are using these to make their products better and to make the experience for the customer better. So we have a bunch of RFID labels coming into the store, you know, that are on these products. So I want to talk about how we can use them in loss prevention, and then I'll turn it over to Madeline, and she'll talk about how we can use that in the inventory management side. So on the loss prevention, I just wanted to kind of go over what you have to have in place in order to use RFID labels for EAS within your stores. Obviously, you have to have the RFID labels in the store. So that's kind of assumed at this point, being that we're talking about source tagging. But another really important component of that is the hardware. You can't have an AM system or an RF system trying to read RFID tags. I know that sounds probably very obvious, but we've been asked that before. You have to have some sort of RFID EAS system, whether it's the overhead system like our ID Top that's in this picture here, or there's a number of pedestals that are also RFID enabled, or there's also hybrid pedestals. We also have RF and RFID compatible pedestals. So if you're a retailer that's used RF for a super long time and you're slowly getting into RFID, there's also hardware that can do both, which is a nice way to kind of bridge the gap as you jump into the RFID world. And then finally, you need some sort of database or RFID point of sale deactivator. And because you're not using a hard tag where you can just detach it at the point of sale, you need to have some way to deactivate the tag on the actual product or the label on the product. So when it walks out the door, the system doesn't alarm. And you can do that with just a simple RFID deactivator at the point of sale, or you can do it through an EAS database, where as you walk out the door, the system will check that product and be able to see if it's been sold or unsold. So here's a slide that just, I thought this picture was really cool. It's an Adidas label, and as we know, they're source tagging all their products. And you can see, I thought this was a really good example of how the RFID inlay is actually in the price ticket. So you can see that it's right there already in it. To the common person, you're not going to notice it really unless you look and see that the RFID symbol or you hold it up to a light. So it's very contained right in there, and then there's nothing added extra or feeling bulky to the product, and that's why source tag with RFID is really cool. But some of the benefits of using labels in the RFID space, obviously it's going to cut down on the amount of hard tags. Not saying that you don't have to use hard tags, or there's no reason to use hard tags. There's obviously a deterrent factor with there, so there's ways you can do that, but you don't necessarily have to do that anymore, which can really cut back on the labor savings. If you do see a need to still have that visual deterrent, then you can still add an RFID hard tag to your products, and then you'll have the double protection. You'll have the label itself, and then you'll have the hard tag, and you can deactivate both of those at the point of sale. Overall, creates a much cleaner store experience. If you did get to the point where you didn't need hard tags and pedestals anymore, and you're doing everything with overheads and labels, then that store is going to feel much cleaner and much more inviting, and still have the security that the retailers are going to need. And that's one thing that we really see the future retailers. A lot of retailers are changing their storefronts, changing their store formats to be that store of the future, and we believe RFID is huge for this. And then finally, just the item history. One of the really neat benefits with RFID is you have the actual insight for every single product. So like this specific Yeezy Boost 350 version 2, when this product would leave the door, if there was a database connection, you'd be able to see exactly what set off the alarm, rather than just say, I'm walking out with 10 products. I don't know what's causing an alarm. Can we dig through the bag, see what wasn't paid for? With RFID, every single label itself will have a unique identifier. So as that product walks out the door, you know that's a size medium orange Under Armour sweatshirt. So it gives you a lot of visibility into your shrink, and item visibility, which then can translate into return fraud. One of the things we see as retailers, we see people, they steal a sweatshirt and then they bring it back to the retailer and try to return it and get some sort of gift card or whatnot. And with RFID, you can't do that, because as the associate scans the product, if they have that database connection, they'll actually see where that product came from, if that product's been stolen, if it's ever been paid for, and then they can simply decline the return. So there's basically two approaches you can do in loss prevention with the labels. The first one being just the very basic entry-level RFID as EAS. So there'd be nothing that's actually connected to a database. So basically the RFID tag is just working as a standard EAS tag. It's not associated. There's no connection between the label itself and the actual product. So when you walk through the door, the alarm just goes off if the label hasn't been deactivated, but there's no visibility deeper than that. You can't see exactly what that product was. And that's just a very simple process of being able to do that. You just take the RFID labels that you have on the products, you set the EAS system to alarm on the source tag product, and then as it walks out the door, if it hasn't been deactivated, it goes ahead and alarms. So that's a very entry level way we see it. A lot of retailers will start there. That way they can really test the overheads or whatever RFID EAS system they're using, make sure RFID is reading well in their environment, make sure they don't have to change anything. And then when they really get to the visibility side and they really want to beef up their RFID capability, that's when they can move into the next phase, which this is the item level RFID. Obviously, the really big benefit with RFID is the item level and the unique identifiers. And so if you can use that for EAS, you can really get a good idea of the visibility of your shrink and the visibility within your inventory. And the way you do that is you set up a database connection that's established between your inventory and your point of sale. So you basically would have two buckets. you'll have one bucket of sold and unsold. So as customers are buying products, everything that's on the sales floor is in the unsold. As they buy it, the system will actually change that RFID unique identifier to then sold. And then from there, it tells the system that you don't have to alarm on this anymore. It's a very clean way of doing things. It changes that right as you're at the point of sale and right as you're going through the purchase system. And again, it's going to give you visibility into your shrink and really help you replenish your inventory. As one of the things that we see is if you don't know what's being stolen, or you know that 3 to 6 months later, it's really hard to make sure you have accurate inventory, and then that can really hurt you in sales as well. So that's one of the really nice things with RFID. If you know what's walking out the door, then you know what you need to replenish. And then obviously it can also help with return fraud, as I was explaining earlier. As explained earlier. So we at NeedApp always encourage our retailers to really look at 3 different ways of incorporating RFID labels within their stores. We all know that sometimes we have very low shrink stores, and then in other areas we have very high shrink stores. And one of the nice things with RFID labels is you have that base layer of security on all your products. But then on your higher shrink items, you can add additional RFID hard tags or whatnot. So then you have the actual visual deterrent that a lot of times is very important depending on where you are and what stores you're at. So on the low shrink stores, you could very easily just use the labels. Not have to worry about the visual deterrent, not have to use hard tags, and just use those for your base level EAS security. On your medium shrink stores, you can really move into adding those hard tags on there on your high shrink products. So your products that are seen the most as being stolen and walking out the door, you can start to add that extra layer of security and that extra layer of deterrent as well. And that can obviously really help in those medium shrink stores cut down on the loss of those high shrink items. And then in your higher shrink stores, you can use both. So especially if you have that database connection, then you have all the data from the RFID label, so you have all the visibility you need. But then you also have that extra layer of security for your real high shrink stores with the hard tag. And then finally, just to kind of go back through, going over the deactivation process. When you don't have hard tags, it's very easy. You don't have to detach anything at the point of sale. Just going through the point of sale is going to deactivate that RFID label. And there's a few different ways to do that, and we're happy to explain that and help as you go through that process. But there's ways to do it where you can change the number in the RFID tag from sold to unsold. And then it just talks to the system. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. We also have an actual hardware unit that you would install just like you would as a AM deactivator or an RF deactivator that you would install actually at the cash register. You'll go ahead and use that just like you would as a regular EAS system. So the deactivation is much simpler. Again, you get the item level specifics with RFID, especially if you do that database connection there. Helps with return fraud, shrink visibility that we've talked about. And what's nice is when you have that shrink visibility, then you know what your hot items are and what hot stores you have. And then in specific regions, there could be regions that have higher shrink levels than other, and you can really have that immediate data come to you and then really make strategic decisions based on what you're seeing within your marketplace. So we think that's really, really important. And then you also have the visibility into store transfers. You can see the history of products moving throughout your stores, what stores they've been at, if they've ever been bought, if they've been returned, all that you'll really be able to get some good data from. And then, with RFID labels, you have the flexibility with the POS stations. You can do self-checkout like we did a webinar previously all about self-checkout and mobile pay. And there's really no way to do that and secure your products in a seamless way unless you use RFID. So once you have RFID in your environment, then you can really start to open up your self-checkout and mobile pay options as well. And then if you're able to do that, your store staff obviously has a lot more free time on their hands to be able to actually do what we all want them to do, is focus on the customer, drive sales, try to do add-on sales and whatnot. So there's a lot of opportunities for store staff to be more engaged with the customer if they're not stuck behind the cash register. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Madeline, and she's going to talk about how we can leverage the source tag labels for the inventory management side.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
So I think thanks for inviting me into this webinar. It's very often we see loss prevention and operations working together because RFID can be leveraged at all different parts of the retail operation. So if you see any barriers to get internal buy-in with RFID, what might help is getting the ops team involved, because the benefit can be in inventory management, being able to better understand where your products are living, and can help to get to that ROI faster. So we start with stock accuracy. It's really important to know what's in your store with a high degree of accuracy, be able to say, okay, this online order can now be fulfilled. We can ship it from the store. We can ship it from 2 different stores, and being able to get that level and that basis of stock accuracy is what's going to be able to enable omni-channel and some of the other initiatives that operations may be working on. So product availability, making sure that product is always available for the customer when they want to buy it. RFID is going to help in this. We see oftentimes that retailers will start with stock accuracy of around 60% in projects. We're able to get them up to 98% just by doing frequent inventory counts. And this is leading to the overall goal of a better customer service experience, being able to have that more personal communication with your customers and maybe only displaying a limited number of items, but being able to talk to them and get them the right size and the right color if they're interested at that moment. So RFID can be at many different read points in the store. Where we really focus on is starting with cycle counting. So instead of doing an inventory count once a year, now you're doing it once a week, or maybe even twice a week. So we're getting that accuracy up, but we can also add it to different areas within the store. So then we can start with goods receiving. After we built that foundation, we can also look at movements from the stock room to the sales floor. So better getting that visibility into where your products live. And then we can do integrations with the point of sale, and finally electronic article surveillance. So this is working with items like the ID top or gates to make sure that we have full visibility of what products are entering the store, where they're moving throughout, and when they're leaving, whether they're sold or unsold. So just to give you an example, if you're not familiar with what a cycle count might look like or how we do inventories once a week, this is just a screenshot of our ID Cloud application. So your store associates will get a user interface that shows them how they're doing throughout the count. We compare this against the existing stock file. So we receive that information once a day, and we know what is expected to be in the store. So we do a count against that. And if you have a large scale store, you can have up to 20 people counting at once. And during this count, we can see that these discrepancies are easy to investigate throughout. So we see we expected to have 5 of this black t-shirt. Well, we only counted 4. So now we have the opportunity to go and see, is that really in the store, or is there maybe theft? Maybe there are some inaccuracies coming from the distribution center, but we want to make sure that we don't come to a situation where we expect we have 3 and in reality we have 0. So that customer is never going to be able to receive that product, and the store associates don't even know it might be missing. So the goal of using RFID within inventory management is, again, to build that foundation of stock accuracy, to lead to availability, making sure that those products are always available. And inevitably, we're going to see a sales increase from that. So we see in these projects anywhere from a 3 to 5% sales increase. So helping you guys to return the investment that you're making in the RFID, whether it's in labels or in hardware. And we're eliminating these situations where we expect that we have this product in the store, and in reality, we don't have it. So we're missing the sale, but we're also then increasing the opportunity to replenish. So that's really high level how we use RFID in the store for inventory management. Happy to go into more detail, but I think this is really important to touch on when you're talking about loss prevention, because they really do work hand in hand. If you're able to track your item all the way through your supply chain from when it was created through when it enters the store and when it's leaving, we can eliminate some of these difficulties like sweethearting or return fraud or out of stocks.
Awesome. Thank you, Madeline. So in summary, I just want to, again, kind of wrap this up. So we have RFID labels coming into our stores. They're source tagged by a variety of different brands. So how are we going to use those? What makes sense for us to be able to use those RFID labels on both on the LP and the inventory management side? We can save a lot of money on EAS tags if we start using the labels when they're coming into your store and you have these labels here. We should really be leveraging these because the retailer themselves don't have to pay for these labels. So it really makes a nice investment if you can go ahead and use these and not have to buy additional EAS tags unless absolutely needed. And then finally, with RFID, you gain the visibility and the insight into your shrink and your inventory levels. And that can all be done with these source tag labels that are coming into your store. So we think RFID is definitely the future of retail. And when we see it as a very important aspect to start thinking about, start looking at the different processes, how you get started, what's the best way to do it. And here at NEDAP, we're super excited to sit down with retailers and see what their biggest challenges are and how we can help, how we can kind of give them a roadway to do that. So I finally wanted to mention, here at NEDAP, we developed an RFID Loss Prevention Academy. It's through our website, it's through our company, but it's really not product focused. We're not trying to promote NEDAP's hardware or anything like that. What we're trying to do is just really educate the market. It's free to sign up. There's a number of classes and it's constantly being updated. And it starts from the very basics of RFID, and they can take you all the way into the database part, which gets very complicated. And it can really give you some good tools when you start to have these discussions with your upper management or your C-level suite there to be able to really understand RFID at a deep level to answer any questions they might have. And then finally, we wanted to mention we will be at the NRF Big Show in New York. We'll be super excited to see any of you guys that would like to stop by. We'll be doing a lot of different demos on both the inventory management side as well as on the loss prevention side, showing you mobile checkout, self-checkout, all that fun stuff. So we'll be at booth at 5963. Yeah, you can use the NEDAP VIP code here and register for a free Expo Pass, so you can come visit us and all the other vendors that'll be there. Yeah, we hope to see you there.
Wow, that was awesome, Tom and Madeline. Thank you so much for that information. We have a lot of great questions coming in from our attendees now. First question, how feasible is this technology for retailers like Rite Aid, which sells various items of theft opportunity like cosmetics and Dove liquid soap bottles, which are usually covered by a silver tag, small silver tag?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that RFID has is the labeling, kind of like what we've gone over before. And what we've seen, especially in the cosmetic area, that we have to have special type of labels. So here at NEDAP, we partner with a variety of different label manufacturers that specialize in creating these type of labels for these type of products. So I think, as far as in the cosmetic world, they're probably going to be the last to be able to have the RFID source tag, but it's not something that they can't do. It just takes a different type of label, and it's very important to be able to know that and be able to add that type of label to your suite if you're applying the labels themselves, especially. Hopefully we start to see cosmetics start to source tag their labels as well. And the overall tags are getting cheaper, and the overall performance of tags are getting better. I know when RFID first came out, tags were expensive and the read ranges weren't very great. But in my previous life, I worked for an RFID tag manufacturer, and we created RFID labels that are designed to be on these exact products or designed to be on metal, and that would still get a very good read range. So it definitely is feasible, but there are challenges involved in that specific product line.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Next question. When starting with the item level RFID program, how does the store upload their inventory into the system? Does it start with an inventory cycle, or does the company have to manually upload their inventory?
Yeah, great question. I can answer this one. So anytime we're starting with an RFID project, it's important that, like I said before, we get that inventory file. It's one of the integrations that's built in. So we have an open API. It's open REST API, and it make it really easy and simple to be able to get this information to us on a regular basis. We can also use SFTP, make it a little bit more manual, but this is always done before a cycle count. And these integrations can take We've done all integrations for the solution in 3 days, which there's only 4. But it can take a matter of days or hours, or depending on if you have some legacy systems, we can work with you and determine how best to move forward with that.
Excellent. Thank you, Madeline. Next question. How long before thieves realize they only need to pop off the tag? With a lot of turnover, especially during Christmas season, the knowledge would be out in the community and the internet before long.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern and a valid question. You know, if you're relying only on the RFID label, then yeah, you know, technically the thief could rip the tag off and walk out the door and, you know, try to return it without the tag, and there'd be no way to actually see where that product is. But what we're seeing, a lot of manufacturers are starting to look at being able to incorporate RFID antennas and chips within the actual product themselves. So sew-in labels, actual RFID labels that are in the fabric of the sweatshirt, or you know, there's just a variety of different ways for them to start doing that, and we're starting to see that more and more. So it's not something that's hit the market yet, but I believe as RFID starts to be adopted more and more, then we're going to start to see, instead of source tagging just on the label themselves, but actually be source tagging within the product themselves. And then from there, it'd be very hard for a thief to, you know, rip that tag out. They'd have to pretty much destroy the product. So that is a concern, and that's a valid question. But as we get into the RFID world, that'll hopefully be eliminated by you know, more design with RFID being actually in the product.
Yeah, so just to add to that too, I think that you can get creative on where that label is. So we do work with retailers where you wouldn't even know that there is an RFID label because it is in the care label. But I mean, the reality is if someone is going to steal something, they're going to figure out a way to get that out of the store.
Absolutely. Thank you both for that answer. Next question. Is there a way to have RFID also capture its bin location? We have the process for RFID counts currently, and the stock locating, and both require accuracy to be effective. Can both be captured with just one function?
Madeline, you want to jump on that for cycle counting?
Yeah, so within the application, you have the opportunity to choose where you're counting or specify more specifically the location of the item. This is typically between sales floor and stockroom. We have had the question of capturing bin locations. Within the distribution centers, we have a solution for that as well. So we can talk about options. Of course, there is a lot of flexibility on what you can do with RFID. So we definitely want to learn more about what that use case is and see what ways we can solve for that.
Excellent. Next question. How effective is the label when applied to handbags? My company currently uses hard tags.
So the label itself, it can be very effective. It's going to depend on where it's going to be applied on the handbag itself. Generally, we want to avoid applying an RFID label directly close to any type of metal. So if the handbag had a whole bunch of buckles on it, or had some sort of metal thing on the side or whatnot, you just don't want to put the label right there. So you'd want to have some air between the actual label itself and the metal part of the handbag. So yeah, it would all depend on label placement, but it certainly could be effective. Yeah.
Okay. Does the data from the RFID tag go outside the retailer when the tag is removed from the building?
So the actual tag of the actual data of the product would be stored in the system. The only thing the RFID tag will actually have is the unique identifier of that product. So it'll just be a number. It's not like on the tag itself you're storing all the information about that actual, you know, product. There's of course there are different ways to do it. You actually can go ahead and include all that information on the actual label itself. What most people do is they just use the RFID number, and then that's associated back to software. And when you put that number into the software, then that's where all the data is actually held. So the tag itself is just like the license plate. And then the actual data is stored on a separate computer or in a software program.
And also to add, in order to retrieve that information, you would need an RFID reader of some sort. Of course, you can buy that online, but if security is an issue, then there are options around locking labels, password protecting them. We can also look at proprietary encoding schemes. So really that information wouldn't look like anything to an outsider, but it speaks to your system in a way that it does.
That's excellent information. To your all's knowledge, do you know of any retailers that sell liquor or tobacco that are using RFID?
Ooh, good question. So we've actually both, I think, spoken to a few retailers that are looking into doing this. I think the reality is that for liquor specifically, first of all, it's liquid. So there are different labels for that, but then the investment goes up. So for something that is really leaving the store and typically not being returned, the benefit isn't fully there, or the ROI isn't as fast. But we have had conversations about maybe looking at carton level tracking as opposed to individual bottles.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that too, you know, if you wanted to tag like cartons of cigarettes or snuff or anything like that, you can do that. Just using a standard label. Tobacco is fairly easy to do with RFID because there's not a lot of metal or liquid involved. Where on the liquor side, obviously, like Madeline said, it's all liquid, so that can be a challenge. What we've seen is you can use like your standard EAS bottle caps. That you could use in an RFID way as well. It's just instead of a RF tag inside that bottle cap, it's an RFID one. So labels are a challenge on liquor, but if that was a product within a larger, obviously, product base, if you sell liquor, tobacco, and a variety of other products, you can use your standard labels on all your other products and then just make an exception for the liquor if you really wanted to do that, or at least have some sort of way to secure it. So there's going to be challenge with that, but overall, yes, it can be done.
Excellent. Next question, can RFID tags be defeated by booster bags like EAS can?
Yes, they can. So RFID, the signal itself can be blocked by the metal. So that can obviously be a challenge for any EAS system. What's nice is a lot of pedestals themselves have metal detection alarming on there as well. So one of our pedestals, it's an RFID based pedestal, but it also gives you the ability to alarm on metal detection as well. So you can spot those booster bags before people are bringing them in.
Excellent. Can you explain how unique the RFID labels are? We have a question on whether RFID labels are exactly the same or for the same product, or if each is its own unique item.
Yeah, so happy to answer this one. So each label is unique in that it has a serial identifier. So we're no longer looking at, okay, I have 5 black jackets in size small in the store. Each black jacket is going to be unique. So you know exactly which item is leaving the store and exactly which item is returning. So instead of looking at UPC level, we're looking at EPC plus a serial identifier. And all of this is stored in the chip of the RFID label. And every time you do a cycle count, or if you're leaving the store, the pedestals will recognize what that item is and translate that again into something that your systems can understand, whether that is on EPC or UPC level.
Excellent, thank you. Next question, have you seen any application for this technology in the 3PL world?
So from my perspective, what that means is items moving around. So we are tracking goods receiving, we're tracking inbound and outbound. So before anything goes onto a truck or a shipment, we know exactly what's leaving the distribution center or the factory. Then as soon as it gets to its destination, it's again checked in, and we know, okay, then all of the items that were expected to arrive have, and then it can also help with distribution to different stores, from store to store. So I think that's where we're looking at with this question, but if there's any elaboration, please feel free to ask.
Excellent. Last question. Do you know of any retailers that are using this technology between their distribution centers and their stores to identify leakage in transportation?
Yeah, so I think that's piggybacking off of the last question perfectly. So what we see is that a lot of chaos is happening in the store. That's where we're seeing the lowest number of, or lowest accuracy. In the distribution centers, they're usually 98, 99% accurate, so not a lot is going wrong, but we are still tracking the goods outbound. So as you're leaving, whether it's going through a tunnel or there's an RFID reader at the exit, we're tracking what's leaving, and then as soon as that hits into the store associates have the opportunity to wave the wand over the box and confirm that everything that's expected is there.
Excellent. Thank you both so much for answering all the questions. I do want to notify everyone on the webinar that NEDAP has graciously sponsored a 25% discount off of all of our memberships and certifications. Again, NEDAP is a great partner of the Loss Prevention Foundation and continues to support the foundation, our industry, and higher education within our industry. So thank you for the great partnership there. And thank you for the gracious gift of 25% off of everything that we offer at the Loss Prevention Foundation. We are drawing for 5 different LPC scholarships tomorrow. The winners will be announced in the email that you receive following the webinar tomorrow on who those recipients will be, as well as a video link directly to review this webinar with yourself or other colleagues that you may want to share this information with. So please be on the lookout for that email tomorrow afternoon, as it will be invaluable to educate and promote RFID within your organization. We encourage each one of you that if you would like to be part of something bigger within our industry, to join the Loss Prevention Foundation and the partners like NEDAP Retail, who support the foundation in elevating our industry and educating our industry. We can't do it without partners like NEDAP. So thank you all so much for joining us for our webinar, and stay tuned for the next webinar to come. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.